Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we are going to be doing a trailer breakdown for the film The Rental. This trailer debuted earlier today, and it's a horror movie. And the thing is it looks kind of interesting because it feels kind of like a callback to something like an older film, like a almost like a slasher movie kind of, but it doesn't seem like it reminds me a lot of a slasher film I actually watched recently called The Mangler. I believe it's also called Fall Break is another name for it. But it basically about these kids that go to this there's a whole backstory with one of the characters, but one of the characters, his father owns a beach house, and the father has him go there in order to close up the beach house, and all the kids wind up getting murdered and stuff. And this kind of feels like that to me, except without the father character and the beach house thing, because the idea is that these people are renting like they're going to like an Airbnb. They're driving out to the country, well, not to the country, but to I believe what looks like a lake. But they drive out to this lake and they are renting this very very nice home in the mountains, and that's basically what they show at the beginning of the trailer. They're driving out there, they get to this place. The guy who owns the place kind of shows them around, and then they have this one little scene at the end of that where he kind of says, they say, "Oh, we should have brought the telescope," because he's talking about all the stars you can see because there's no city lights, there's no light pollution out there in the country, and he says, "Oh, what do you need that for in the city? Are you a peeping Tom?" Kind of jokingly, but it comes off kind of weird and creepy. So you move forward in the trailer, and they're having a good time. They show them partying, they show them having sex. Like, okay, this is basically slasher movie territory now. And then you go to a part where one of the girls finds what she thinks is a camera in the shower, and you find out that basically somehow this entire building is being observed, basically from various angles and from various cameras. And apparently the characters seem to find out about this, which again, this trailer does and doesn't give away about the plot of the movie. It's a slasher film, so the plot's kind of basic, but I'll get to that at the end. But after we go through this whole little segment where they find these cameras and these various pieces of equipment around the house, then we start cutting to stuff that goes into horror movie territory, and that's kind of like halfway through the trailer. We start seeing like there's a car accident at one point. It looks like they're stranded there somehow. I don't know if that has to do with the car accident part of it, but it appears somehow they've been stranded at this beach house or at this lakeside home, and I like the isolationist angle. It works very well for stuff like Friday the 13th, where it just takes place somewhere out in the fucking woods. But in this case, this is odd to me because these are people that you can follow the road back. You're not lost in the woods. You're not running through the woods running from a killer. You're at a house that seems to have a singular dirt road that leads somewhere. So I feel like you would be able to kind of backtrack that and get out. Now that again, that's assuming you're being hunted and whatnot. But at the beginning of this, if you're thinking like, oh well, the car is gone or something like that, or the something happened, the car's not working, we can hike to town or something like that. Grab a flashlight, you can hike up the road. Which maybe that's something that actually happens in this movie. I don't know, because again, they don't really show that in the trailer. They just show the car accident, and they keep going through a few of these events. They show one girl at the end. It's actually this kind of interesting little long shot where it follows her walking across a room, and then as she goes outside, she exits through some kind of a doorway. Then you see what looks like a man in a mask come out from behind something, an object like a pillar, and he begins to try to attack her. Or it looks like he's going to attack her, and that's when they cut away. So I like that aspect of it. It actually got me kind of interested in the film because of the slasher element, and because it wasn't a reboot or a remake or a generic stupid thing. It looked like it was kind of like one of those old B slasher movies from the early to mid 80s. just obviously with a modern camera and modern amenities. And that's the other thing that kind of makes me weird about. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that because I think at the beginning of this they say there's like no cell reception or something out there, which would make sense. So you could have that element of the isolation as well with no technology. Um, but at the same time, I find it kind of odd that all these people would presumably from the city, because they do mention at one point that they're from the city. Why all these people from the city would just suddenly leave all their electronics at home and then go out to the country? I mean, again, maybe they'll give an explanation for that in the movie, like they just want to get away from the technology or whatever and go back to basics and have fun. But maybe not. I don't know. Those could be actually plot holes in the movie for all I know. But it does, it does do a bit of a build up. I like the music. The music has a good build up over the course of the trailer. It starts off with a lot of like very small piano notes at the beginning, and it progressively gets more and more instruments start to come in as you get to the end of the trailer, and then they have certain elements where it cuts off and it cuts back in, which is again that's good. That's good for the trailer. That's good impact for the scenes. The trailer does not give away 100% of the story, and I say that in the sense of the trailer doesn't give away the kills, which is good. The only one that it kind of gives away, and again, this is assuming that she actually gets killed, is the one woman that we see in the long shot at the end when the guy's about to attack her. And again, we're assuming that that is an actual kill. It might not be. It could just be a red herring they have in the trailer. So we don't actually see any kills in the trailer, which is good. You don't want to do that, especially if you're doing something with a slasher movie, because this is also what appears to be a relatively small cast of characters, where I think it looks like only about 4 people that are in this movie in terms of the victims. I guess you would cast them as, and maybe a 5th one with the owner. If it turns out that it's just Psycho running around in the woods, and the owner's not the one killing them, but he is spying on them or something weird like that. But the way it does paint it, they paint it that he's the guy who is killing them or trying to harm them and also spying on them. So I would assume that's his role. So he's not a victim. So you really only have 4 surefire. They're probably victims. So that's a small body count for a slasher movie, unless you draw those kills out and make them good. So I'm glad they didn't put those in the trailer, because that would have ruined it for the film if they had actually left those in. But I give it props for that, because it doesn't give those things away, which is the major thing you don't want to give away in a slasher movie. The story in a slasher movie is kind of, other than the story of the killer, which again they don't really give away, other than the fact he likes to spy on people, and he rents a bed and breakfast where he can, or an Airbnb where he can spy on people. So you can do that, but other than that, we don't really know a whole lot about him. They don't give away any kind of like backstory or stuff like a Jason Voorhees or a Michael Myers or a Freddy Krueger. They don't give any of that stuff away. And maybe he does have some kind of a complex backstory, or maybe it's just like a random guy murdering people, which again was a lot of that kind of B movie, B slasher movie genre stuff in the early to mid '80s. A lot of it was emulating Friday the 13th, admittedly, but at the same time, they had a lot of those one-offs. You had stuff like Mad Men, you had stuff like, Maniac was sort of a one-off, but you did have, a recognizable killer. But Madman Mars from the movie Madman is just a crazy guy that went on a killing spree. That's literally all it was, and then he turned into a weird fuzzy ape thing that runs around in the woods. But again, that's the same idea. Or like the burned guy from The Burning. Very little backstory. He just gets burned by some kids, and then he decides to go back and murder kids. So there's not too much to those, and I have a feeling that's going to be one of those things here. It's that this is probably going to be a guy, he just likes to spy on people, and they find out about it, and they're going to report him. So instead of getting arrested, he has all these like measures in place so that he can kill them and get rid of them, and then continue his Airbnb business and keep making money. Because apparently that's reason enough to kill. I don't even know if he'd get jail time for that necessarily, depending on what state that was in. But it's not. It's a bit of an updated storyline from what you would normally have in the '80s. Normally in the '80s it was just like, they're camp counselors or they're on a long weekend. Well, that's basically what this is they're on a long weekend. But Airbnb, we rented a place in the woods, basically. Again, that was kind of done. It's a bit more of a modern update on something that was old, I guess, is probably a better description of it, because it's basically the same thing that they did in like the middle Friday the 13th movies, like four, yeah, 3 and 4. They basically the same thing. They in the third one there's a cottage that one of the girls owns, like out in the woods, and then in the fourth one they rent the teens rent one, and then also the Jarvis family either owns or rents one right next door to them. So, you know, they have that kind of an element that's been a little bit updated, but it's still kind of the same, which I like. And the other thing is that it looks like they at least got people in this that seem to know how to act. The acting in the trailer, the back and forth seems like it's okay. The only one that kind of weird is like a bad one where it's like one of the actresses is kind of like in the fetal position and she says it's never going to be okay. And it seems like that's taken very much out of context. It's obviously a line in the film that I think is meant for more of a drama related relationship scene, as opposed to what they're using it for in the trailer, which is kind of like a tagline at the end. But I get the idea of doing that. It's good advertising. But I want to know what you think. As usual, excuse me. As usual, I put the trailer in the comments below if you want to go see that. And if you have seen it, what do you think about it? I want to know in the comments below. Do you think this is going to be kind of an interesting little movie? Do you think this is maybe a bit of a different kind of slasher film than we're used to getting nowadays? Something a bit more akin to that '80s kind of environment and feeling. Or do you think it's just going to be one of those kind of cookie cutter things and it's going to be kind of a piece of shit? By the way, this is actually a first time directing movie for Dave Franco. I believe that's actually James Franco's younger brother. But like I said, I want to know what you think, so put your thoughts in the comments below. As usual, I like to read them. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?